and it is starting now.
Awesome. Well, thank you. First off, thank you, Vicki, for always facilitating during not only GradReCon, but the Maximizing Productivity session. So this is a joint session between Maximizing Productivity workshop series with Graduate Student Life and Learning Services, as well as a part of the GradReCon workshop series that Graduate Student Life puts on with university library. So thank you everyone who came today. Remember that the info guides are live and you can check out the full schedule for all the sessions. And I just wanted to thank Vicki as we get started for presenting today. So I will hand it over to Vicki. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Austin. All right, so I'm so excited you guys are able to join us today. I'm going to be talking about project planning, specifically how you can get your research, thesis, or dissertation done. And I want to invite you to participate, and you can do that either by turning on your microphone and speaking. Know if you do that, the entire audience will be able to hear you. You may also engage in the chat, and so the chat is in the Collaborate panel. So on your screen, on the lower right-hand corner, there's a little pink tab and with two arrows. And if you click that, it's going to open a new panel. And you've got a chat, the attendees, a place for sharing, and then a settings wheel. So if you want to chat, you can use that. If for some reason you are wanting to get my attention, you can raise your hand. The hand raised icon is at the bottom center of your screen. There's an outline of a person with a hand up. You can click on that and it will get my attention that you would like to ask a question or you'd like to answer my question. But I'm hoping that this is an interactive session for today. Welcome to everybody who just joined us. Excellent. So let me talk about what is the plan for today. So I have a picture here on the left, and it says self-operating napkin. We've got a person sitting at a table eating a bowl of soup, and there's a really complex contraption in front of them to wipe their mouth so that they don't have to do it themselves. This is a cartoon by the artist Rube Goldberg, and I think sometimes when we're planning, it's very easy for it to become overly complicated. And it's just a reminder, we want to have your project be something that's manageable, that is well planned out, and makes it easy for you to actually implement and get everything done. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of making a schedule for doing your research, whatever your project is. Some strategies for putting a plan together for your project. And when I say project, this could be a thesis, it could be a dissertation. For some of the doctoral programs, they're more project-based than doing original research. So that's why I'll use those terms interchangeably. Then I'll give some strategies about getting organized and the importance of starting writing, even when you feel like you're not quite ready to do that. I'm going to advise you to get some feedback and support, and then some advice about what to do when life happens, because it inevitably does, and some ways that you can manage any internal stuff that's happening that might be getting in the way of your research or writing project. And feel free, you don't have to wait for me to, if you have a question, you can just jump right in. So the first thing that I want to mention is that it's super important to make a schedule for yourself, for your project, and to have a routine for it. Does anybody do this now where you have already made a plan, made a routine for yourself to work on your research or your project? Does anybody do that currently? Juliana says no. How about other folks? No from Melody. Abigail says yes. What kind of system do you use, Abigail? Maria says, sadly, no. It's more of when the mood strikes and energy is available. I feel that. Matt says yes, but inconsistently. Vanilla says no. Anna, no, I always seem like I don't have the time right now because I have other work to do before. I feel like I'm always putting out fires. That is a great point, and I think a lot of us feel like that. Lee says yes, big time. So Abigail says writing out ahead of time a series of tasks that I need to do to complete a research project to be done on time. Great, thank you for sharing that. Kate says no big project right now, but my final is a project. Oh yes. Don says I'm trying to, but it's a struggle right now. And Abigail, no. So it could be on this day, have the outline done. On another, have the annotated bibliography done. A little later, have the general layout figured out. Okay, so it sounds like you give yourself some interim deadlines, some things that you need to have done by a certain date, instead of just like the project is due on October 31st. In between, we're going to say on this day I need this done, and this day I need this done. So ultimately, you have the final project done. That is a fantastic strategy. It says my system is OneNote. I use the pages and subpages to organize the structure and resources I use. That sounds really. I'm not as familiar with OneNote. Somebody that I work with is using OneNote, and it was really interesting the way it was organized. I really liked the way it was organized, so I need to learn more about that. Cheryl says, my schedule is oftentimes unrealistic and does not think about daily tasks realistically. Hannah asks, Lee, do you know if OneNote is available through Mason? That is a great question. I have no idea if OneNote is available. If anybody knows the answer. Abigail says, for really large writing research assignments, setting small checkpoints helps keep me from getting buried under work. And Lee says, yes, every Microsoft program is free through Mason. Good. Oh, Jasmine noted that, yes, it's through your email. So it's probably one of those apps that are available underneath when you click on. Look, there's several apps that we all have access to. So for somebody earlier was mentioning that they're not leaving enough time for the daily tasks or being unrealistic and constantly putting out fires. I did not include the prioritization chart in this, but that's also something to think about. With prioritization, we want to think about if something is important to us or not important to us, to our goals specifically. And then is a task urgent, meaning it has to be done immediately, or is it not urgent? And a lot of folks tend to live in the important and urgent. And so you're running around putting a lot of fires. It's a very useful place to be. Ideally, we want to be working on tasks that are important but not urgent. So like you're working on things that are due in a few weeks, that you're keeping on top of stuff. You're keeping on top of your reading each week instead of letting it pile up. It's a lot easier to manage if you do a little bit of work for your classes or your project every single week instead of trying to do like these massive, just huge blowout study sessions or writing sessions. It's a lot harder for us to sustain that. And somebody's sharing the links on here. Thank you guys so much for doing that. So I always think about time management at several different levels. And if something's important, it should be part of your routine and your scheduling. So first we want to think about longer term deadlines. And I'm going to say in a minute what I mean more about that. And then there's your routine. And so this is your routine for your classes, if you're still taking classes, for your job, if you're working, things that have to happen on a regular basis, and have time for doing research, writing, and that sort of thing. So Stephen Covey talks about your big rocks, that your goals are your big rocks. And if you don't put your big rocks in your schedule, they're never going to happen. because your time is going to get filled up with all this other stuff. But if we put a plan on your schedule and we work around it, that's actually going to help a lot. And then in addition to your weekly routine, there's your specific tasks that you're going to work on. And it's a lot easier to break things down into little pieces than to think about them in an overall big project. So let me go here. All right. If you're writing a dissertation or a thesis, when I'm talking long-term deadlines, I mean like years, possibly. Okay, so you need to think about the long term. So starting with graduation, when do you want to graduate? And if you're doing a thesis or dissertation, when does that need to be submitted to the office, to the University Dissertations and Thesis Services office? And before that, you need to have it submitted to your committee and approved and do your defense. So like there's a lot of really long-term deadlines you need to work backwards from. Also, if you're wanting to have any grant money to help support your research, that takes months to do. So you have to think maybe a year at least ahead of time about applying for grants if you want to attend a conference and present. So really sit down and think about what are your big long-term deadlines like graduation and application deadlines. I did list out here for the fall, spring, and summer the deadlines that the Dissertation and Thesis Services Office has. They only had through summer. I would have put next year's deadlines as well. But this process takes some time and you need to account for that. So have a long-term plan. And usually I recommend putting that onto like a yearly calendar where you write those bigger deadlines. Okay, now as far as weekly routine, like I was saying, your big rocks. If doing your research, if doing your project, if working on your dissertation is a goal and it's a big rock for you, you should put it in your schedule. Now this is a screenshot of Google Calendar, and it's a very simple one. I know everybody's lives are way more complicated than what I've put on here. But what I've done is just use Google Calendar to block out time for work, and I've color-coded that green. And then this person still has a class, and I know it really starts at 7:10, but they have a class, and then they have set a goal to work on their research for 2 hours every day, 6 days a week. And so it's blocked in here. So for this person, they're getting up early in the morning, working when they're at their most attentive and their freshest to do some work. You might not have a 2-hour block of time that you can do work on this, and that's okay. If you have an hour, that's great. If you have half an hour, that's great. But block out time and stick with it. Treat it like it is an appointment or a class or your job. So if you wouldn't like skip work to do something else, don't skip your writing time or your research time. Block that time out and treat it like a meeting or treat it like an appointment because it's important. You should also put in your routine things that are important for like your self-care. So if you want to exercise and you want to have a routine for that, your spiritual activities, date night with your significant other, those are totally cool to put on your schedule, and it helps to include that information on here. But plotting it out helps you see what time you actually have available, so you can be realistic about what you can get done in a week. But I know that the dissertation's a big project, but if it's going to take, like, let's say it's going to take you 12 hours a week to get things done, your brain is not going to like it if you're like, I'm just going to sit here on Saturday for 6 hours and Sunday for 6 hours and pound it out. You're going to get neural overload. You're going to get tired. It is better to do a little bit over several days to do these huge chunks of time. And I'm like, when I was putting this together, I'm like, okay, but Vicki, you sit here and you're at work from 8:30 to 5 every day. But at my job, I'm constantly changing tasks. I'm meeting with people. I'm working on administrative tasks. I'm constantly switching. It's very rare that I do one thing for a really long period of time. So it's the same. I can't imagine if I had to sit and just write for 6 hours, which there was a point when I was doing my qualifying exams, I did have to do that. And it was very, very hard. It's hard to sustain. And we're doing things for the long term. Are there any questions about, like this is a very simple one, but I do recommend drawing out a weekly routine for yourself and being realistic about what you can get done. Do folks have any questions or thoughts about this? Okay. So big long-term deadlines, draw out your weekly routine so that you can actually see it. Yes, Abigail, thank you. Make sure to remember and stay hydrated while you're working. Your brain needs fuel. Your brain needs water. So it's important that you eat regularly and you stay really well hydrated. Okay, so we've got our long term, we've got our weekly routine, and I recommend actually writing that out. And if you go to Learning Services webpage, on the main page at the bottom, it says get study resources, and the main things on there are related to time management. So you can download like a weekly prep schedule if you want to print it out and just handwrite it, or you can type it up in a Word document. So something that I do a lot with students, and this is actually what I spend most of my time doing during academic coaching, is that I help students make a plan for the week of what tasks they're going to complete. We want to make sure that when we're working, that we have some goals in mind, and then we've got to break that down into specific, measurable, attainable, related, time-bound tasks. Okay, so I'm talking about SMART goals. Okay, so there is a page on our webpage that is called Daily Prep Schedule, because I work with a lot of students who don't use any kind of time management system. So I will often provide that sheet to the students. Recently have learned about Google Keep. So if you have a Gmail account, you have access to this, and it is like virtual cards that you can put up on a board. So what I've done is I've made, basically it says take a note. I created 6 notes here. The first note I labeled goals for the week. And so you want to think about, what are my goals that I want to accomplish? For this person is prepping their in vivo and transcribe some interviews. But there's other stuff that has to get done. There's other work for other classes. I would recommend having, if you do something like this, you do your tasks just for your schoolwork and just for your academics. And then for your job, you have a separate one. Don't intermingle them. And then when you're at your job, you use your plan for your job during that time. And when you're doing your schoolwork or your academics or your research, then you use that. But keep them separate, because it's so easy for work to take over, and because it seems important, like, oh, this is my job, I get paid, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't turn this in. So set some boundaries between work and what you need to do for school. And then what I did was I made a note for each day of the week. I color coded it. You can change the color, and I activated the checkbox feature. But you can do this in your daily planner. So if you have a paper planner, at the top of the page for the week, write out 2 or 3 goals. And then for each day that you're going to be working on your thesis or dissertation or your project, you want to write out 2 or 3 things that you're going to work on, and be really specific. So for Wednesday, for example, I have read and annotate 2 articles. That's specific. I'm going to read them and annotate them, and it's measurable. There's 2 of them. And then it's time bound because I'm doing it on Wednesday. Now, if you want, you can take it even a step further and say, I'm going to do this on Wednesday at 6 p.m. But I've found sometimes if we put too much in the routine, it gets overwhelming, and then people's schedule falls apart. So I like to just have a skeleton of a weekly routine, and then using the tasks to kind of plan out exactly what you're going to do each day. And then things like, I just really try to break things down, like finalize tape 1, read chapter 3. Now here it's very generic because it's an example for you guys, but you should actually put the course it's for or the project it's related to. Yeah, so this is Google Keep, but you can download that daily prep schedule from our webpage. You can do it in a daily planner. Another option is to use the Google Task List. I think in Outlook it's called To Do, and in that you just say what day it's due, and it will add to your calendar as well. But you can have your calendar open, your electronic calendar, and you can have your electronic tasks. And then the other thing I forgot to mention is don't just plan like today, plan today, tomorrow, the day after. Ideally, you want to plan out a week at a time. That's going to help you think more long term, and things aren't going to sneak up on you, and you won't be surprised by stuff. And then I highly recommend taking regular breaks and building them into your schedule. Having time for things that you want to do, not just the stuff you have to do. So if you want to meditate or do yoga, you should include that in your weekly routine. If you want to watch your favorite TV show at a certain time, put that on your schedule. It's hard to follow a schedule when it's just stuff you have to do. We want stuff that you're going to look forward to doing. So whether that's you want to meet with your fantasy football league virtually, or last night I attended an event for the Virginia Museum related to stuff around Halloween because I love Halloween stuff. I put that on my schedule. It was something to look forward to, or not yesterday, it was the day before. It was something to look forward to, and it was a good reason for me to get my work done so that I could get off of my work computer and switch over to my personal computer and attend something that was going to be enjoyable and fun. Another strategy that we use in relation to time management is this Pomodoro timer method. If anybody uses this, feel free to type in the chat. Yeah, so I think having break time during the day can be helpful if I've accidentally underestimated how long some work task will take. It gives a little more padding in terms of flexibility. Yes, that's good, and it spreads things out, but I hope you still take a break. Even if it's not the full length of the break you planned, I hope you're still taking a break because we need time to recharge our batteries. So Pomodoro, what you do is you set a goal for what you're going to work on. So we could have used that task list before and say, okay, I'm going to start reading and annotating an article during this week, and you set a timer for 25 minutes. Now actually set a timer. What this does, you know how productive you get right before a deadline, right before something is due, right before you have to have a draft to your professor, your chair? Okay, and all of a sudden, boom, you get really productive. It gives you a little bit of adrenaline kick. This is meant to be similar to that. Not to be overly stimulating, but to just kind of have you trying to meet a deadline. So while you're doing it, you want to work with focus and attention, and just basically race the clock. How much can I get done in 25 minutes? And then when the alarm goes off, you reset it for 5 minutes and you take a break. Get up, get a drink of water, take a bathroom break, play with your pets for a few minutes, maybe go outside, maybe get a beverage, have a snack, but don't cyberloaf. Don't just sit on your internet because that's too easy to get caught up in that loop. Don't watch Netflix. You can't watch a show in 5 minutes. Even YouTube is evil because the next episode plays or the next video plays. So I would stay away from any time wasters during that 5-minute break and really try to do something that's refreshing. Get up and do some jumping jacks, okay? And then when the alarm goes off for your break, you're going to assess your progress. Did I stay on track for my 25 minutes? Did I get done what I wanted to get done? Am I going to continue to work on the same thing, or am I switch gears? And then if you want, you can do another. Thank you, Juliana. You can do another 25 minutes, okay? But you don't have to. You can do 1 Pomodoro, you can do 2, 3. If you do 4, though, after that 4th one, take a longer break of 30 minutes to an hour. That might be a good time to have a meal. Take a meal break. Or if you can control yourself, maybe watch a show or go outside and take a walk, okay? So 2 hours worth of work, that's pretty good. But you don't need a 2-hour block to do this. You can just do 1 Pomodoro. Now, I'm not the Pomodoro police. I'm not going to come check on you. If you want to change the time on this, go right ahead. In fact, I do 45 minutes with a 15-minute break, because especially with writing, it takes me a while to warm up. And by the time I warm up, it's time to stop. So I do 45 minutes or 50 minutes with a 10-minute break, depending on what I'm working on. But this works great, not only for your schoolwork. Yeah, the app incorporates the longer break too, but you can also adjust it. Yes, thank you. A similar app is Focus Timer, which already sets up the 25 on, 5 off, but you can adjust the time during each session. That's fantastic. Now, I don't recommend having your break time be longer than your work time, which sometimes happens. Students are like, well, I'm working for 10 minutes and then I'm taking a 20-minute break. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. It should be work time, a little block of work time, and a short break. But if 20 minutes is all you can focus for, then do 20 minutes with a 5-minute break. But a lot of students who have issues with focus and attention like this, executives use this, people who are very, very busy use a similar technique. I actually use this to do my laundry. I don't need it anymore, but I'm like, to do laundry is so dreadful to me. And so it would take me days to like get everything put away. And when I set an alarm and said, okay, I have to get it done in 25 minutes, I actually can put all my laundry away in like 10 or 15 minutes. So now I don't need the timer anymore, but it's like a race. You can use it with your kids too. It works really well with getting your kids to do their stuff. All right. Now, it's hard for me to give you specifics on how to get your thesis or dissertation or project done because each department has their own instructions on how you need to get that done. So check your college or your school. There should be some guidance for master's or doctoral students who are working on this, on the actual procedure. But in general, when we're talking about planning something, here are some general guidelines for you. The first is that you want to determine the parameters of your research, your project, your thesis, or dissertation. It is super easy to be overly ambitious. And I was this way too. For my thesis, I was like, I'm going to do mixed methods approach, and I'm going to look at all these different groups. And my chair was like, no, you're not. We want you to be finished. So not to be, to graduate. So we scaled way, way back on what I was going to do. And we decided to just do a quantitative study. And we limited the population that I was looking at, because otherwise it would have been too much. It would have been too much for my thesis project. Remember, if you're a doctoral student, you are learning to be a scholar. And this is an exercise to help you work through the steps of the process of doing scholarship and sharing your work and creating new knowledge. But it doesn't mean that you have to do in your dissertation a career worth of research. If you do decide to become a researcher, a scholar, a professor, you're going to have a whole lot of time to do other studies. So your dissertation could just be the beginning of your research agenda that you want to pursue in your career. So you can look at different aspects as you go, but you don't have to do it all at once. Not just on this project. We want to get this project done. Then you want to go ahead and make a plan. How am I going to accomplish this? How am I going to break this down and make it into something that's doable? So again, that you're working on it consistently a little time. For some projects, you might find it helpful to hire people to assist you. And you need to check with your department about if that's allowed or not. For some, like I worked as a research assistant when I was an undergraduate, helping other people with their doctoral students with their research. And so they had to communicate with me about what I needed to do as far as going into the classroom and collecting data, observational data on school-age children. So having that plan in place, and then that information needs to be communicated to those you're working with. So whether it's undergrad student research assistants or people who are helping you out or other grad students, make sure that you're communicating with them and that you're clear on what's needed. You also want to communicate with your chair. Your chair is going to be your main contact person, and you want to make sure that you're communicating with them regularly. And as I mentioned, you need to delegate tasks out and monitor the progress. So monitor your progress. Am I hitting these interim goals that I've set? And if you've got people who are working with you, are they staying on track? So you need to keep up on top of that. And then, of course, you're going to complete the project, whatever it is, write up your results, and go through whatever your departmental process is for. Usually it's you submit it to your chair. Once your chair approves it, it goes to your committee, and then you get to go and defend it, which sounds scary, but is actually not that bad. It's not as scary like defenses sound like, like it's a fight and you have to defend yourself, but it's more about sharing what you found and what you learned during the process. So that's just like a really generic, there's really great books out there about how to complete your dissertation, but it's so department specific. I've seen everything for proposals that are like 4 pages long to 100-page long proposal. So it's really like, it varies so much, it's hard to give really specific advice about getting a thesis or dissertation done. Now, a great strategy to use is something called a Gantt chart. And for the first part of the Gantt chart, what you do is you make a list of the tasks that you need to complete, and in big broad categories, like writing a proposal. That's part of the process usually. And then you're going to break it down into smaller subtasks, and then estimate how much time you think each aspect is going to take. The other thing to consider is, can I do these tasks at the same time, which is parallel, or do I have to complete this task before I can start on this next task? That's called sequential. So for example, I have to get my proposal accepted before I can start collecting data. Okay, that's sequential. Proposal acceptance, then I can start collecting data. Think about the consequences if something takes longer than expected, either on your timeline or on your plan, or affecting other people possibly. It's really hard when people are going to be wrapping up during winter break and their professors and their committee are not available for them to do their defense. So you have to keep those other things in mind. So this is an example of a generic checklist for a dissertation. And so we've got proposal writing. I'm estimating 4 months. That's really, really short time period. Getting IRB proposal, if you're using human subjects, that can take a couple of months. Gathering materials, for the example that I have in mind, it's related to my thesis, where I had to obtain a survey and adapt that survey. So I had to obtain that survey. And then there's a pretest, a week to administer that to the participants, and then some time to start inputting and analyzing the data. And then 4 months to do an intervention. Like maybe we're going to say, like, do workshops help grad students are they retained in graduate school? So then we would, do workshops for a semester and then do a post test or some kind of post assessment afterwards and input all that data. Then 2 months to write up all of the results. Okay, so here's my checklist. And I can put this onto a Gantt chart, which is going to put the timeline out so I can see it on a calendar. And this is where you can see, like, here's the proposal that's 4 months, the IRB. I don't have to wait for the IRB approval necessarily to get my materials together. And then there's one. I've got data. I can start phase 2 while I'm still inputting the data. And you can see it's very neatly, beautifully laid out. Of course, a dissertation is way more complicated than this, but I just wanted to illustrate this. Several students, I work with several grad students. Most of them are in the either proposal writing stage or in the data. They're in these later stages, and they found this to be very, very helpful. I'm all about free stuff. There are Gantt chart apps out there. One is called Tom's Planner. You can get a free version of Tom's Planner, and he has a template for writing dissertations. So here's an example. So it's a little bit more complex, and I know that you probably can't read it, but we see these broad categories, like topic finding was the first, and then the second was dissertation proposal. The third was the literature review. And then under each there are subtasks. and you can write down like what percentage you're at, keep track, and share this with other people if there's other folks who are participating. So it's a really nice option for planning out this really big project. What is a Gantt chart, or what's Tom's planner? So Tom's Planner is an app. It's a web page you go to. If you like just Google Tom's Planner, you'll see it helps you come up with these tasks. So you add your tasks to the side, and then it will lay out your, like, basically lay out a calendar with a timeline so you can see, you can see what's coming and what you need to get done. So he's got some templates there so you can start from that and then customize it to yourself. But it really helps you see like what's coming first and what can come next and how this works out. Highly recommend it. So there's a lot of different project apps that you can get. Trello is similar to Keep, that it's like a virtual corkboard, and you can make cards and virtually move the cards around on the screen. And so what I see a lot of folks do is they'll put one task per card, and then they put columns on the screen. So one is like needs to be done, working on, and then completed. And so you make the index card, and then the virtual index card, you just drag it over to whichever column it's in. And that way you know, like, oh, these are the things left to be done, and here's what's completed. The Brain is a mind mapping tool. So you can draw out a mind map. You could possibly use it to help you plan out your project. But I usually find it really helpful for planning out, like, when I'm writing something and what the main ideas are and what sub ideas are connected to what. But you can also use it to draw out a graphic if you need that as an illustration for your research. And Tom's Planner is on here as well. Now, it's super important that you're organized with what you're doing. I was working on my thesis for longer than I should have, and I wasn't working on it consistently all the time. I was working on it a couple days a week, and I would completely forget what I had done the last session, and I would find articles and I would print them out because I like to print out my stuff. And I'm like, when I'd organize it, I'd realize that I already had it. So I started keeping a research journal. This is not necessarily a place where I was keeping my annotations from the articles. It was more of a journal of what did I work on today, what key search terms have I used, and what is my plan for research tomorrow, or writing, what am I going to work on next. And I just got like composition notebook from the drugstore, and I would put the date and what I was working on. You can do this electronically, but I find it really helpful to do that, to keep some kind of a journal as to what you're working on. If you do have hard copies of materials, develop a system for filing those documents or those materials. Get a file cabinet, get a plastic file storage thing, and only put your materials related to your research in that container, and that way you're not having to search everywhere. Plus, you're supposed to retain your research materials for a certain amount of time after your thesis or dissertation has been accepted. You need to retain those. You want to have them nice and organized. Also, create a digital archive of documents on your computer. I look at students' computers all the time, and they've just saved everything to their desktop. It's very hard for them to find, and it's visually overwhelming. So make some folders. At first, you may just make a general folder and then figure out what subfolders make sense. But don't go crazy with the folders, then you can't find anything either. But have some organization. I'm going to talk about Citation Manager in just a second. But here's a very important piece of advice. Back up everything. Back up all your electronic documents. So save it on your computer. Save a backup onto an external hard drive that you unplug. Save it to the cloud. Have multiple copies, because there's always that horror story of somebody who their computer crashed along with all of their data and all of their writing and everything. So backup, backup, backup. So Citation Manager. This is like, It's the best thing in the world. All right, so a citation manager is a platform you can use to keep track of the sources that you're finding. Yeah, Zotero, yay. I kept track of my sources in piles because I printed everything out. We didn't have Zotero or EndNote back in the day. So I just printed everything out and I did it all by hand. So the nice part is for both of these, there's add-ons to your web browsers. So if you find a web page, an article, research on the library website on one of the databases that you want to keep, I call it my Magic Z. I can just click my Magic Z and it will save that citation. And on the screen, we can see that it's saved the journal type, the title, the author, some of this relevant information in here. I can add tags to this. So if there's certain key terms that I'm doing research on, I can add tags. I can notes. But where the real power of this comes in is the add-on for Microsoft Word, and they also have it for Google Docs now. We just realized this the other day, that Google Docs can do this too. And there is a Zotero or an EndNote tab. And when you're writing your paper, you can, and you get to a point where you want to put a citation in, you click on that tab and it will open up your citation manager and you select which source you want. You can tell the citation manager what platform you want to use, not platform, which citation you want to use. You want to do APA, MLA, Turabian, Chicago, IE, CEIE, I think that's the one for chemistry. Whatever the one it is, it will do it for you. And it puts the in-text citation or the superscript if you're doing footnotes or endnotes, and then it will populate your works cited or your reference list. This is so important because all of that has to match when you turn it in to the thesis and the dissertation and thesis office. And when you're editing and you're adding things and taking things out, it's hard to keep track of it. You do need to double check it, but it makes it so much easier than where does the comma go? Where does the space go? Where does the period go? So Deanna, when I was talking, added, I think LA is also a reference citation management software. I'm not sure how to use it. They have a Mendeley workshop through GMU libraries. Yes, absolutely. Make use of the library workshops. And Zotero was developed at Mason, which is one of the reasons why I usually recommend it. But EndNote also has really similar features. They're both fantastic. Okay, then that brings me to, you got to start writing at some point. So if your project, which almost always, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have to write something up. Either it's your research or if it's a project, you need to write up your project report. There's always going to be more to read. There's always more information you can gather. Every day, new things are being published. You are never going to be able to read it all. Just let that go. I also find that for me, finding more sources is a way to procrastinate on writing. So ideally, you want to start writing pretty early, even if that's just as you're getting your articles, writing up annotated bibliographies to get you started. So you have that information ready to go. The other thing to keep in mind is it's very hard to write your whole paper in your head. Our working memory is really small, can only hold like 7, actually now they're saying even less than 7 units of information at once in your working memory. So if you're trying to write your dissertation in your head, make it perfect before you start putting pen to paper or starting, typing on your keyboard, you're going to find it very, very difficult. And I see this a lot with students who are really to do a great job. They're like, I have to make it perfect in my head. No, you don't. That's not at this point. Writing is a way to get it out of your head, and you think about writing it down that actually makes it easier to remember, and you can start to understand how you think about the information, and you can start to organize it. But initially, you just want to produce. We're not trying to torture ourselves over keyword choices and making sure we have the best argument and the most logical argument. It's just, let me just get my ideas out because I'm going to rewrite this. That is part of the process. It's an iterative process. And you're going to rewrite it and rewrite it again and rewrite it again. And your chair is going to make you rewrite it again until the point where you're just sick of it. So for that first go through, you want to produce, write as much as you can. And it's okay to jump around sections. So maybe you have some ideas for one part of your lit review, and then there's a different part that you've got in your mind. Just write it out. Or I have some ideas for my methodology section. go ahead and jump around, but just keep writing. And our goal is to edit later. We're going to initially just start writing. And this is the hard part to get started on, but it's so important. Make sure that you're getting feedback and support throughout this process. Usually the reason people are coming to learning services during their thesis or dissertation is because you no longer have the support of a class with regular class meetings and deadlines. And it's kind of isolating and lonely. So we act as like somebody to be accountable to. So we help folks set some goals, and then we check in and say, like, how are you coming with that goal? What's getting in the way? Let's come up with some solutions. But you don't have to come to learning services to get that. You can have a friend, provide that service to you. I recommend setting up regular meetings with your chair. And again, big rock, make those meetings ahead of time. Because if you wait until the last minute and you're like, oh, gee, I'd really like to chat with my chair in the next week, and now you're trying to set something up and you're busy and they're busy. So maybe it's like, hey, can we meet the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. and just put it on both your schedules? And if you need to switch things around, you can. But I would really strongly recommend that you have a regular meeting set up with your chair. Join a writing group. See if your department offers one for support. If not, maybe you can start a writing group. You don't have to all be writing the same thing. It's just a group of people that you meet with on a regular basis to share your writing and get feedback from each other. The University Libraries and the Writing Center sponsors weekly write-ins on Friday mornings. So you can sign up. If you go to the Writing Center webpage, you can sign up for that. And basically, you're committing to doing the writing. Now, right now, of course, it's virtual, but I think there's still something really helpful, even if you're having a virtual meeting. If you know other people are working, it kind of like makes it easier to work too. We call that body doubling, when you're working and somebody else is working, even if you're not working on the same thing. And if you do have a group of people that's working with you to do help with your research, make sure you meet with them regularly and talk about success and challenges. As an undergrad, I would not, if I thought something was wrong, I wouldn't have brought it up. I would have just said, well, this is just how it is. But because the researcher had regular meetings with us when we had questions or we were confused about things or we thought something was wrong, we could bring it up to them. And it was less intimidating if I had to reach out to him and be like, hey, I think there's something not quite right with this. Thank you, Austin, for sharing the weekly write-in. Another really great way to get feedback and support and to have some accountability is to sign up to present your research at conferences. So you can do presentations at Mason. We do occasionally have poster presentations. You can give a roundtable discussion. You can submit a paper to present to an audience, and that's got a deadline. You got to submit your proposal, and then it's accepted, and you've got to write it up and give your presentation, and then you're expected to submit your paper afterwards. So I had a colleague when I was working on my master's program that she was really good about this. Every time I went to an event, she was doing a presentation on a different aspect of her dissertation. And it really helped her get feedback because people would ask her questions, and she felt engaged in the scholarly community. All right, please, please, please use good self-care. People are like, oh, I don't have time for self-care. Self-care is, the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh, I have to take a spa day. What's she talking about? There's no way I can find a day to go to the spa. It's not about a spa day. It's totally nice, and I really appreciate having a spa day. Self-care is actually something you do for yourself every day, like brushing your teeth. Brush your teeth every day. That's part of your self-care. If you don't brush your teeth regularly, there's consequences. Same thing if you don't eat well, if you don't get good exercise, if you don't sleep regularly, and you don't have downtime and socialize and have fun, it's going to accumulate. So I see this both ways. I see this with students who are struggling, and I also see this with people who are overachievers. I don't have time for that. I need to cut back on my sleep. I don't deserve to take a break. You deserve to take a break. You deserve to take a walk outside, okay? Because these activities are going to refresh you and make it easier for you to, you're welcome, Huda, it's going to make it easier for you to get your work done. All right, so don't discount this. Please don't cut back on your sleep. Most of us are not getting near enough sleep each night. All right, real quick, some things you can do when life happens. This is from Volker's book, Writing Your Dissertation in 15 Minutes a Day. You know, you read that title and then in the introduction, she's like, I don't really mean 15 minutes a day, but more about she advocates doing a little bit of work towards your dissertation every single day. And what she says is if something happens, some major issue comes up that interrupts your graduate work, interrupts your research, your project, your dissertation, your thesis, job loss, somebody gets sick in your family and you have to care for them, you get sick and you need to take a break and take care of yourself, make a plan on how you're going to address whatever that issue is and how your work for your academics is going to fit around that. And think about what your life priorities are. Sometimes it's better to put off graduation because like for me, I needed to care for my mother when she became really ill. So it took one semester longer for me to finish my master's program because I really needed to spend time with her. I didn't stop, but it just took a little bit longer than expected. Understand what's flexible and what's not. There may be some things that they have wiggle room, like, okay, I'm going to extend it out a little bit longer. There are some things that might not, especially if you're pushing up against the time clock because you have to finish by a certain date. But talk to your chair about what's going on and your department because they're people too. They've had to overcome struggles. And we know that you guys are really resilient because you made it this far. So don't be afraid to ask for help and ask for guidance. And not just from your department, but if you need help from, you know, Student Support and Advocacy Center, or if you need help from Counseling and Psychological Services, know that these offices are available to assist you. And then finally, there's the other piece of our mental blocks, right? It's one thing is like, oh, okay, I'm having an issue, like my car got crashed or whatever, and I'm safe, but I need a new car. That's an external block. But I think the internal blocks are what a lot of us deal with most of the time. And this can range from imposter syndrome, like, oh my God, they've made a mistake. I don't know why they admitted me. I'm not good enough to be here. Or having performance anxiety. I'm worried my writing's not good enough. You know, I'm not going to perform well. I'm going to embarrass myself. And all of that negativity really can interfere. That anxiety will literally shut down your prefrontal cortex and you can't make clear, rational decisions on things. So the first is to think about having a growth mindset. So Carol Dweck found that successful people weren't the smartest people. They were the folks who knew that they could get smarter if they worked really hard at it. So if you encounter something you don't know how to do, if you're struggling with doing something, ask for help. And sometimes I'll look at something like, I don't know how to do this. Add the word yet. I don't know how to do this yet. That implies a growth mindset, and I'm going to work towards understanding it. And I'm going to do that by reaching out to my professor. I'm going to go get some tutoring. I'm going to consult with the statistics department because they do have that as an option. Pay attention to your internal thoughts and emotions. Sometimes when I'm procrastinating, I have to think about, why am I procrastinating? It's like, ooh, because I don't want to do this, or I'm scared, or I'm overwhelmed. And when you know what your emotions are, it makes it a little easier to push past that. Using a worry pad is something you can keep a separate notebook, and when you have those intrusive negative thoughts, write them down, get them out of your head and say, I can worry about that during my break. And then hopefully you can refocus on the task at hand. Crappy writing. Okay, so again, for those folks who want to write that perfect first draft, that will totally prevent you from producing any kind of a draft. So write the worst, crappiest paper you've ever written, just to get your ideas out, just to start the writing process. And set up rewards for yourself. If you set a goal to work for 2 hours a day, maybe at that end of that period, you give yourself your favorite piece of really expensive chocolate, or you make your favorite cup of coffee, or you reward yourself with an hour of Netflix later on that night. You can have small daily rewards, and then you can give yourself bigger rewards. They actually work. And then finally, get professional help. There's the Writing Center, there's counseling and psychological services. So if you're having a lot of anxiety about stuff, make an appointment. We offer individual counseling and group therapy. And this is free to Mason students. So know that we're available to help you. And I think I'm out of time. So there's a list of campus resources. Hopefully we will be able to send you a list of I'll be able to send you a copy of this PowerPoint, but I do want to do a poll. So please hang around for just a second. I'm going to start this poll.
And while
Go ahead,
he's sharing the poll, I just wanted to share that yes, Vicky's gonna send us her presentation, and we're gonna put it on the GradReCon website. It'll be a PDF of the PowerPoint, so y'all will be able to access it. So that's the A. The B is that thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Vicky, for putting this on today for us. It is much appreciated. And we are I'm going to drop a few links in the chat real quick. So the first link is to the info guide, A. It will be where you can find this presentation and the other presentations that have already happened today. And then B, it'll be a list of the rest of the sessions that are happening today and tomorrow. Today, we only have one more session today. And it's the ABCs to publishing. And then here's some more events that Grad Life is putting on related to academics and writing. So I thought it would be cool to share with y'all during this time. So here you go. Thanks for coming, everybody. And I hope you all have a great day.
Yes, I think the poll is active.
It is active. You just on.
I don't see any options for the poll. It just says make a selection, and there's no words on it. It just says 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, the slide. If you look at the slide on the screen, I learned one strategy or tool that I will be able to apply during my graduate program at Mason. 1 is strongly agree, 2 is agree, 3 is disagree, 4 is strongly disagree. Yeah, Blackboard Collaborate has been fussy. It used to let you preset the polls, and now you like have to type it in. If I set it in advance, it like zeroes it all out. So I apologize for that. So this was the easiest to quickest way to get it done.
That makes sense. I just have a narrow focus sometimes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for coming.
Yeah, Melody, I was feeling the pressure of the time because normally I give a little explanation, but I'm like, oh, I'm out of time. I have to post it. Austin, did you take attendance?
I did.
Thank you.
Also, it's already in Mason 360, so when Julie compiles all the lists, you can have a breakdown of everything from your session.
Great, thank you.
Do you want me to send it to you right now? Would that be more helpful?
Nope, I don't need it. I was gonna.
Awesome.
Usually I do it while I'm speaking, but there were too many people to add it to 360. You know, to add the attendance to 360. So thank you guys so much.
No, I did it. I got it. Yeah. No, happy to do so. It was great. We had 20 at the largest point. We had 26 people checked in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I will. Now I did check the poll results.
Yeah. Can you email that to me?
Yes, and I'll email you my PowerPoint as well.
Yeah, both of those would be great.
And I'll need to